A large, worn map sprawls out, covering the table. Much of it is unmarked, sans for one area in particular. A myriad of colors divide the region into borders, with various names denoting cities and domains. Gilgamesh reaches out, stabbing a sharp nail into the aged parchment.
What about here?
It's about 2 days' travel, sir, and unfortunately...
Sirtir reaches down, a red crayon clutched in between her fingers, and in 2 clean strokes, puts an X over the spot Gilgamesh had pointed out. He falls back into his seat and huffs.
Seriously? How many domains does she have? Don't answer that.
He looks towards the coast, where his kingdom was situated, a sizable splotch of gold. A larger territory to their western border denoted Orisha, and to the northeast, Babylon, a similarly sized kingdom to his own. He points out to all the territories to the east, which are all colored in the same sapphire blue and had a crudely drawn...
What is that? Some sort of snake with horns?
It's a dragon, sir. We received word from Babylon that a dragoness from the east has been claiming territory across Persia. She recently visited Babylon asking to form an alliance. They didn't say what their answer was, but apparently she was last seen heading towards Uruk.
Was there anything else?
Nothing you want to hear.
Try me.
It's about Morrigan.
No.
And Heracles.
God, no.
Gilgamesh falls back in his chair. He's about to close his eyes when the doors to the war room burst open and a messenger ruffles in. The courier almost stumbles over the gaudy, traditional Mesopotamian robes that cluttered around his feet. The older god fidgets with his braided beard as he bows.
What is it, Izamad?
Your Highness,
A visitor.
a conqueror.
Would you just shut up and let me?
Well, maybe if you gave me a chance to speak.
No, we talked about this. We're supposed to take turns.
And it's mine this time.
It is not, you senile codger.
Gilgamesh pinches his brow and exhales. He has no idea how Enki put up with this guy.
Would you spit it out already?
Isimud snaps to attention, his head spinning in fright, independently of his neck, revealing the second face on the back of his head.
Our sincerest apologies, my lord.
You don't speak for both of us.
Sirtir steps forward with a bounce and a bleat. Gilgamesh coughs and forces himself to avert his eyes, his face growing red, but quickly composes himself and looks back to Isimud as Sirtir begins speaking.
Hey, Mr. Mud. You had something you wanted to tell, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
We have a visitor.
She's an invader, I tell you.
You say that about everyone. Will you just let me...
Oh, fine, just get on with it, but don't say I didn't warn you when the city is burning to the ground.
Your Highness, we have a visitor. She claims to be from a faraway kingdom and requests an audience with you.
Gilgamesh narrows his eyes. He'd hoped they'd have more time to prepare themselves.
That must be our dragoness.
He pushes himself to his feet and adjusts his thin vest before running a hand through his hair.
Take me to her.
This long stretch of road never gets any easier to travel. It seems like no amount of food, water, or good intention could make it any less bleak. When one roof gets patched up, another falls through. Whether it be fields of dying crops or deformations among the young, the divinity shortage has hurt them most. Even before the mortals died out, the Anunnaki had it hard. So many of their followers converted and began worshipping others. Before long, there wasn't much divinity or orison left for the Anunnaki. So it pains the young king to have to watch as his people starve, while knowing someone like Morrigan has domain after domain to herself. Olive's skin stretches, almost tears, against itself as Gilgamesh tightens his grip. He grits his teeth and would have probably greeted their guest with a vicious look had Sirtir not been there. A soft, woolly pat on the back and a reassuring smile calms him down. At times like these, he doesn't know if he should look proud for his people or feel sorry for them. Would a smile inspire them or make him look ignorant to their plight? Once they arrive at the front gate, Gilgamesh opens it with a wave of his hand. Gilgamesh makes sure the stone parts at a snail's pace to build anticipation in his visitor, for they were about to meet the greatest king Midgard's ever known. Like always, Gilgamesh makes sure to puff out his chest. Standing before Gilgamesh and Sirtir is a girl not much older than either of them. Unlike his dark skin or Sirtir's tan skin, this woman's flesh is a pale, milky white. Her long hair is black as coal, and her eyes shine like gold. There's something distinctly statuesque about her angular visage. From her shoulders to her legs, her body is an assortment of sharp edges. Though her features made it obvious, Gilgamesh does spot the Asian influences in her outfit. He believes her little white tunic is called a gi, or something of the sort. The girl's most peculiar features are those she shares with the dragon. 6 horns, split into 2 sets of 3, extend out from the sides of her head. Her feet are segmented by 3 large sharp claws in the front, and her heel is raised by a 4th. Lastly is a large tail that, while looking heavy, sways with a grace that keeps it from touching the ground. Like her cheeks and exposed shoulders, her tail is covered in a sapphire plating. Strapped to her side is a long sword in an odd-looking sheath. It's rocky and covered in holes. The dragoness bows, as does Sirtir. Gilgamesh beats back the desire to tell his advisor off for bowing to a ruler other than himself. Gilgamesh's lips part and
Hajimemashite.
the dragoness coos.
Watashi no namae wa Toyotama desu.
Gilgamesh stares, mouth agape. Had the woman spoken to him in a foreign tongue in his kingdom? He looks over to gauge Sirtir's reaction and finds her waving with a smile.
Yoroshiku!
Hey, Surtur.
Gilgamesh coughs. He elbows her, and when her attention falls on him, he nods towards the dragoness. Sirtir looks as though she's just remembered something and takes a clump of wool from her wrist and offers it to the woman. As it comes in contact with her hands, it begins to glow a faint gold. Instead of taking the translator, the dragoness pushes it away.
There'll be no need for that. I expected my vernacular to be acceptable amongst the many common Midgardian languages. That was presumptuous of me. It's rude to enter another god's domain and not speak in their preferred tongue.
So why hadn't she spoken in his language from the start? Even Gilgamesh altered his tongue when traveling overseas, but this woman didn't. It seems to him as though she had done that on purpose. As disrespectful as it was, he doesn't press it.
Apology accepted.
Toyotama,
She finishes on his behalf.
but many know me as the Otohime.
Otohime. I am.
Gilgamesh.
Toyotama, the Otohime, cuts him off in an almost authoritative tone. After a quick look around, she continues.
Your reputation precedes you.
Gilgamesh should glare at her. He should cast her away for speaking to him with such arrogance. It was one thing to speak another language on his land, but another matter entirely to interrupt a king.
Whenever you're ready,
Otohime says, obstructing his angered thoughts.
I'll only enter your domain with your permission, Your Highness.
Without a word, Gilgamesh cranes his neck down the road and in the direction of his castle.
Thank you.
Otohime walks past Gilgamesh and Sirtir. She comes to a stop and glances up, no doubt in the direction of his castle. It's only a second later when Otohime turns her head, practically tilting it backwards to get a look at Gilgamesh.
Shall we begin negotiations? Perhaps over tea?
Gilgamesh watches Otohime's every movement, not because she's beautiful, but because he still suspects she's mocking him. Whenever he goes to speak, without fail, she sips from her teacup. Then, when she's ready to speak, she puts her cup down in such a way the porcelain clanks, a sound that grates on Gilgamesh's nerve once they've rounded off the first hour of discussion. Deciding it's time to combat this woman's habits, Gilgamesh flicks his wrist and demands,
Surtur, tea.
though all he gets from his advisor is a series of tiny, almost worrying bleats.
Sir, we don't have tea.
Sirtir looks to Otohime and Gilgamesh's eyes follow.
She brought that herself.
Sirtir leans in close to Gilgamesh and whispers,
She's kind of intimidating.
So, you've won an alliance. Did you bring an offer?
He shoots a quick, approval-seeking look at Sirtir. She just sighs and points back to Otohime. Otohime's answer doesn't come immediately. No, she just sips her tea. This sip goes on for so long it's starting to make Gilgamesh uncomfortable. When she finishes, she brings her cup back down on the matching china plate. The sharp clank makes Gilgamesh flinch.
Protection.
Gilgamesh feels nervous, and he hasn't a single clue why. So, to counter the churning of his stomach, he starts laughing.
Ha! You jest. Earlier you spoke of my reputation. It's imprudent to think Uruk needs any protection. It has me, after all.
So, you're a one-man army?
Of course.
Otohime's lips curl into a wry smile. A bit creepy, but still very, very sexy.
Well, What if you face an army full of one-man armies?
The slurping noise of Otohime and her tea keeps the room from becoming dense with silence. Gilgamesh scoffs, then looks over at Sirtir. Alas, there's nothing she can do besides offer a reassuring-looking smile.
I'm confident in not only my capabilities, but my shars as well.
Otohime peers beyond Gilgamesh, and when he looks over his shoulder, he can see it's to the map they worked on earlier. All those little red check marks mock him. They should be ticks categorizing a rival's territory, but instead, they're like tallies that show how many victories she has over him.
You can't sense divinity, can you?
Gilgamesh's eyes widen, and he fights the involuntary twitches throughout his face. What would even make her say that? It's true, but she doesn't have to say it like that.
The downside to having a mortal parent. How did you know?
Well, it's become apparent over the course of this conversation. Your kingdom's divinity is being siphoned.
What? What do you mean?
Gilgamesh stands up. No wonder the crops are dying and buildings are giving out. Gilgamesh is working with even less power than he thought. But how? Since when?
I offer my alliance in the form of protection. Psychopomps, the Demon Syndicate, the Phantom Queen. I'll offer you security against anyone.
There isn't much we can offer now. So what could you even want?
Otohime takes one more sip from her tea, finishing it. Her gaze narrows on him and she's tilting her head again.
Your fealty.
The words hit Gilgamesh and he slumps back down into his seat.
My army needs to be able to fight at its fullest while in your domain.
Gilgamesh doesn't know what more to say, and given the look on Sirtir's face, she doesn't either. The two can only glance to one another, then look back to Otohime, before returning to one last mutual, worrying gaze.
Take a few days to think about it.
Otohime says as she stands up.
I know how this looks, but please understand that I'm here as liberator and nothing else.
Once again, he's at an abandoned pier, waiting for Ishtar. It's different than the last one, but it's shady all the same. The scattered trash, graffitied walls, and polluted water offend Gilgamesh's royal sensibilities, but for her, he's happy to make these concessions. They waste no time with formalities once she arrives. Ishtar walks up and starts emptying orison into his hand. Instead of watching the coins bounce into his palms, he watches her. There's traces of blood in the fur around her collar. She smells like tobacco, but it's clearly there to throw him off. Had she no magical means of hiding the scent? Though she's as exquisite as always, the smell of a man lingering about her blonde hair does sour Gilgamesh's views of her.
And 100. I'm positive that should keep the lights on in Uruk for the rest of the month.
Unlike usual, Gilgamesh doesn't bother counting the orison. At this rate, it'll be trading hands soon anyway. Gilgamesh squeezes the handful of glowing coins tight until they break down into nothing but a series of small flashing lights. The particles orbit his hand before pooling together in his wrist.
1,500 years. 1,500 years, and still with those incessant feline puns.
They're funny.
They aren't.
They're cute.
They aren't.
Could you show me some gratitude?
For what? You're just paying off your back taxes, as any good Uruk citizen would.
Uruk citizen. Don't make me gag.
She throws her arms behind her head and spins on her heel, pivoting away from Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh hunches down behind Ishtar. He plops his hand atop her head, nestling his fingers between her twitching lion ears. Of course, knowing Ishtar, Gilgamesh hops back in time to avoid having his throat clawed out. Ishtar lunges forward and grabs a hold of Gilgamesh's arm. All at once, he goes from standing over her to laying beneath her. She straddles his back and tightens her grip on his arms, locking him.
That was easier than usual. What's wrong, Gil? You're not questioning your mortality again, are you?
Gilgamesh exhales and pats at her wrist so she'd let him go. Once he's free, he gets up, dusts himself off, and walks over to one of those graffitied walls he hated.
No-ish. But I have been thinking.
Uh-oh.
Maybe it's time for Uruk to merge with another kingdom. A kingdom with the means to take care of them.
I've been working pretty hard, you know. So I was hoping you'd have spiffed up the place by the time I got back.
That could be today, Ish. It might be easier to rule Uruk with you there. You were a princess, so your consultation would be invaluable. That, and I wouldn't have to spend so much time worrying about you.
Let's not do this.
Ishtar says, and when Gilgamesh peers over, she isn't even looking at him. No, Ishtar's gaze is on the dirty river before them. The wind rolls by and pushes her blonde hair along, causing it to graze her brown shoulders. Gilgamesh ends up looking away from her as well.
I'm more useful to Uruk on my own.
By doing what? The least you could do is tell me. I worry about my people. You included. Maybe if you just gave me some peace of mind, I wouldn't have such a hard time ruling.
So, you want to blame your poor leadership skills on me? Some things never change, huh, Gil?
That's not...
Ishtar's raking her claws along the air before her. Much to Gilgamesh's surprise, an invisible ripple appears, guided down by Ishtar's nail.
I didn't mean it like that.
Sometimes I wonder, is this about what's best for Uruk? Or what's best for King Gilgamesh? You should figure out if those things are mutually exclusive.
Ishtar's got one leg through her portal.
We'll meet up when I have more orison. Later.
Ishtar leaves Gilgamesh alone there, somehow feeling like even less of a king than before. When Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, he turns over the orison to Sirtir. She watches him, no doubt wondering if he's come to a decision concerning Otohime's offer. Gilgamesh stews in his throne, unable to get his mind off Ishtar, his people, and the looming threat that is the Phantom Queen. Gilgamesh can feel the armrest giving way to his grip.
Sir, I know you're feeling boxed in, so I was thinking...
Sirtir's soothing voice stops him. He looks over to find her with large slabs of solid clay in hand. Gilgamesh can't believe it at first, but recognizes that he needs the audience. Sirtir, beaming, offers the stone document to her king.
Maybe we consult the tablets?